So, Jill, what did you think of Vincent and the Doctor?
It was great. It was one of my favorites.
It was one of your favorites?
Mm-hmm.
That all?
It's a very good portrayal of his mental illness. Made him very personable.
Indeed. I love you.
I love you too.
Hello everyone, I'm Papa Ken and welcome to episode 56 of Discovering Doctor Who. Getting closer and closer to the end of season 5, and this time we have the episode, The Lodger. A nice little... At first I thought it was going to be a Doctor Light or even a Companion Light, or I guess in this case Amy Light episode, but... And to a point it was sort of Amy Light, but... Well, I always start going into what I think about the episode, but first, let's talk about my favorite parts of this episode. The first of which is basically the whole romantic comedy deal that this episode has going on. I have a love-hate relationship with rom-coms. Way too many of them are just really cliched and annoying and basically the same story, and if you watch a trailer you literally see the entire plot unfold in front of you. And to a point this one had a lot of those same tropes. It was like, you know, the awkward good guy, the you know, the love interest that, you know, he wants to say he loves, but he can't because he's too shy, but she loves him too, but she can't say it because she's too shy, and but I felt like it was actually done pretty well in this episode, whereas it can get really annoying if drawn out over the span of an hour and a half to 2 hours in a movie. For this episode, I thought they did a really good job of balancing the whole rom-com deal. And the comedy in this episode, the calm part of the rom-com, was really good. Like, this episode had me laughing out loud several times, you know? And I mean, you know, sometimes there'll be episodes, and not specifically Doctor Who, but other shows where they'll be trying to make you laugh and it falls flat. But this one, whoever the writer was, I forgot to check, whoever he was, he knows how to write comedy pretty well, because it was a good mixture of wordplay and dialogue and some physical comedy as well. So yeah, I really liked the rom-com part of this episode. Now, the second favorite part of this episode, the creepy upstairs neighbor. Now, even though we find out that it's not an actual neighbor and there's not an actual upstairs, which was weird, but just the whole way it was played out, the creepiness, almost like a bit of a horror story element to it. It was just done really well, in my opinion. I mean, I have a few issues with it that I'll talk about in a little bit, but overall, when it came to that upstairs neighbor and all the noise and the mystery surrounding it, and then all of a sudden, like, we have this old man the first time, then the younger guy the second time, and it keeps changing forms. Like I said, I just found that to be really interesting. But moving on, my third favorite part about this episode, the Doctor. Now, as I mentioned before, the comedy aspect of the rom-com was great. The Doctor, the lines he had, the things he said, the things he did throughout this episode were just hilarious. And actually, to go back to the whole romantic comedy deal, in a very strange twist, especially during the soccer segment, and when Sophie, I think her name was Sophie, or Sophia? Anyway, when she was, like, you know, kind of fancying the Doctor kind of became what would be considered the antagonist of a lot of romantic comedies, which was just a really interesting role for him to be in. Now, of course, I know a lot of people, or at least in the universe of the show, find the Doctor to be this wonderful, perfect man. But just overall, and taking that into account, often the antagonist of these romantic comedies kind of fits that bill. And I like the way that they played with that. Just everything about the Doctor in this episode was just phenomenal and really, really good and fun. And which brings me to my final favorite part of this episode. Also has to do with the Doctor and also Craig, his flatmate. Yeah, his flatmate, or he was renting the flat. Anyway, whatever. The whole memory transfer deal. Now, I'm pretty sure in the past we've seen the Doctor transfer his memories or some of his thoughts to other people by doing sort of like a Vulcan mind meld kind of deal, or just like, a very peaceful, calm transfer. So apparently if a Doctor headbutts someone, it's like a super fast transfer of memories. And that whole scene was just so absurd, so ridiculous, and so funny, and fit in so well with this episode. Now, yeah, I just don't know what else to say. It's like, it was really good. Like, all the positive parts of it were just really positive and really good. But let's talk about some of my annoyances with this episode, because, as you all know, no matter how good I find an episode, I kind of have to find something negative. So I have 3 negatives here. The first of which is the second victim that we see the upstairs neighbor take. And my issue with it is this. Of all the different people that come by the house, the second one is just a random girl, very disheveled. I can only assume she's meant to look drunk. And I think she was also the only person of color that was a victim. And I don't know, it's something about that whole thing. Now, she wasn't the only female victim, admittedly, but just the fact that any of the victims had to be, like, none of the other victims were drunk. None of the other victims were all disheveled and messed up looking. Only that one was disheveled and supposedly drunk. Why? Why was that necessary? I don't think it was at all. It could have just been a random girl walking down the street. Maybe look like she was a little bit tipsy if you want to portray her being drunk. But why, out of all of the victims, did that one need to be just disheveled and... I'm getting a little bit upset there. Yeah, just the way the second victim was portrayed just annoyed me to no end. But moving on from there, before I rant more, let's talk about my second annoyance with this episode, which really involves all the victims. Who in their right mind would go into this house, especially the one with the little girl, especially the people that went in following a little girl, and yes, I'm including Sophie there, but it's like this little girl whose face you can't see saying, "I've lost my mommy. I've lost my mommy. Can you help me find her?" And then she walks in to the room she lives in. You wouldn't find that a little bit weird? You wouldn't find that just the least little bit concerning, like, this seems a little bit wrong. Perhaps I should call the cops? Or something like that. Something like that. Oh, man, I'm getting really animated about these annoyances, aren't I? Alright, so moving on. My third and final annoyance with this episode, the resolution. Now, not the entire resolution. The whole pseudoscience aspect of Craig wanted to stay, and that's why, like, the ship wouldn't go for him, because, supposedly all the other people were possibly people that wanted to leave as well, and that's why it drew Sophie in. I can understand, like, Craig could be the only one that could stop it, basically. But then they take it a bit too far. They stretch the pseudoscience a bit too much, and all of a sudden you need Sophie to do it too. And even though she was wanting to go, as soon as she doesn't want to go, she can help out. But that's not enough. They need to kiss in order for it to work. And again, that plays in with the whole romantic comedy deal. It's like, you know, when will they kiss? When will it finally happen? And of course it happens then. But you're telling me it couldn't have happened after Craig saved the world, basically? It couldn't have happened then. I don't know. It's just so annoying. But yeah. So those three parts, again, I may just be getting a little bit too animated and emphasizing that a little bit too much, but they really did bother me about this episode. Now, before I get into my final thoughts, let's talk about my song of the episode. And this one was actually pretty hard. I listened through the songs that were specific to this episode, and I did come up with one final decision. My song of the episode is "Kiss the Girl" by Murray Gold, obviously. And that song is just, well, one, it's the longest of the episode, but also just the music throughout is just easily the most epic of the episode, and just so dynamic. It's like listening to that, it's something that, you know, I could possibly work out to, or I could be, you know, doing something energized to. And that was just, you know, that was the song that just really, really caught my attention. Now, there was one other that caught my attention as well. I'm going to call it the honorable mention, essentially, and that is "A Useful Striker," which is the music that played during the soccer scene, and a little bit afterward as well. Cat's playing with a golf ball. But yeah, it just, both of those songs were really good, and it was really hard to choose between the two. But overall, I would say "Kiss the Girl" is the song of the episode, with "A Useful Striker" being a very close runner-up. Now, moving on, the quote of the episode. This one was really hard to pick, too. There were a lot of really good lines throughout this entire episode, mostly from the Doctor. And the one I picked is actually from the Doctor. It takes place right after the soccer game, or I'm sorry, the football game. And it's when he's talking to their friend Sean, or the leader of the football team, Sean. And it's the exchange. Sean says, "You are so on the team. Next week we've got the Crown and Anchor. We're going to annihilate them." And the Doctor says, "Annihilate? No! No violence. Do you understand me? Not while I'm around. Not today. Not ever. I'm the Doctor, the oncoming storm." And you basically meant beat them in a football match, didn't you? Again, like I said before, that was just one of those moments that had me cracking up, because I kind of expected it, but it was just so perfectly said and so perfectly timed. It was just, it was really, really good. And that was just one of many great quotes from this episode. And I would love to hear what some of your all's favorite quotes were, like possibly some things that were more meaningful than that one. I just picked it mostly because of how hard it made me laugh. But yeah, definitely a really good one. Now, as for my overall thoughts on this episode, I really liked it. Now, I know one of the commenters from last week, or the previous episode, said that this episode they really, really didn't like. And to a point, I can understand that. I really can. It's very different, and it's very much, except for the end with the crack, is very much a filler episode. And if you don't like romantic comedies, that can be another like downfall of it basically. But for me overall, I honestly did really like this episode. However, the negatives were, for me, again, perhaps I'm overemphasizing their negativity a bit, but especially the resolution of it all really bugged me. It didn't negate from an episode that I overall enjoyed and found pretty light and silly and funny, which was only going to lead up to this finale, which you all are driving me crazy about. But yeah, I would say overall I really like the episode, but it has faults for sure. Now, I honestly, I couldn't think of any questions for this episode other than, you know, just like, you know, what's going to happen next, which obviously I'm gonna find out when I watch the finale two-parter. So, yeah, I guess I'll just end it here. Everyone, thank you very much for joining me for this brand new episode of Discovering Doctor Who. As always, let me know what you all think. Let me know your thoughts, some of your favorite quotes, some of the things you loved and hated about this episode. Can't wait to hear them. And until then, everyone, I am Papa Ken, and I'll see you next time for the Pandorica Opens and the Big Bang. Geronimo! Wait a minute. What?